My name is Emily, and at 28 years old, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. That was until I found my wedding dress covered in deliberately cut holes the day before my ceremony. The culprit? My stepsister Abigail, who had already scheduled her own wedding on my exact date. What she never expected was how her attempt to destroy my special day would completely backfire, changing our family forever. I still remember the moment I discovered those jagged cuts in the delicate fabric and the decision I made next. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever dealt with toxic family members, and stick around to see how I turned disaster into triumph. Life wasn't always complicated by step-siblings and family drama. Until I was 12, my childhood was relatively normal. I grew up in a modest suburban home in Pennsylvania with my mom and dad. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. Dad worked as an accountant while mom taught elementary school. Weekends meant movie nights with homemade popcorn, and summer vacations were road trips to the beach. I was their only child, and I felt secure in their love. Everything changed when I was 12. I still remember coming home from school to find my mom crying at the kitchen table. Dad had confessed to having an affair with a coworker, and just like that, my secure little world collapsed. The divorce was messy, as most are. My dad moved out, and suddenly our house felt twice as big and half as warm. For 3 years, it was just mom and me. We developed a special bond during that time, leaning on each other through the hardest days. I helped with cooking dinner while she worked late to make ends meet. On weekends, we'd have girls' days where we'd bake cookies and watch old movies. I saw my dad every other weekend, but those visits grew increasingly awkward as he built his new life. When I turned 15, Mom announced she was dating someone named Richard. He was a successful business owner with a chain of furniture stores across 3 states. The first time I met him, I was struck by how different he was from my father. Richard was tall, confident, and drove a luxury car that cost more than our entire house. He took us to fancy restaurants where I didn't know which fork to use and bought Mom jewelry that made her blush like a teenager. 6 months later, they were engaged, and we moved into Richard's mansion in the wealthy part of town. That's when I met Abigail, his 16-year-old daughter from his previous marriage. She had long blonde hair, designer clothes, and a bedroom twice the size of my old one. I remember thinking she looked like the popular girls at school who never gave me the time of day. I tried my best to befriend Abigail. The first week we lived there, I offered to help her with math homework, knowing from Mom that she struggled with the subject. I suggested we could have movie nights like I used to with my mom. I even complimented her extensive shoe collection, hoping to find common ground. But Abigail wanted nothing to do with me. From day one, she saw me as an intruder. "This is my house," she told me bluntly during our first dinner together. "You're just guests who are staying too long." What started as cold shoulders quickly escalated into active sabotage. During my sophomore year, I worked for weeks on a science project about renewable energy. The night before it was due, I found it accidentally soaked with spilled soda. Abigail claimed she tripped while walking past my desk. I stayed up all night recreating it and still managed to win second place at the science fair. When my mom and Richard congratulated me, Abigail rolled her eyes and muttered that the judges probably felt sorry for me. Junior year, I joined the debate team and discovered I had a natural talent for public speaking. When I was selected to represent our school at a state competition, someone started a rumor that I had cheated to get the spot. 3 guesses who started it. Though the accusation was disproven, the cloud of suspicion followed me to the competition. My silver bracelet that Dad gave me before the divorce disappeared from my jewelry box. My homework would mysteriously go missing. My personal journal ended up in the school hallway with pages ripped out. Each time, Abigail had an explanation that my parents accepted without question. "You probably misplaced it," Mom would say. "Are you sure you put it there?" Richard would ask. "You know how forgetful you can be," they'd both remind me. I learned to lock my bedroom door, keep my valuables hidden, and make digital copies of all my schoolwork. I stopped telling my parents about Abigail's behavior because it never led anywhere productive. Instead, I channeled my energy into school and extracurricular activities, counting down the days until college. The summer before senior year, I got accepted to a prestigious journalism camp. When I returned, I found Abigail had redecorated her room using the exact color scheme and design ideas I had sketched in my planner. When I pointed this out, she laughed and said, "Please." As if I'd copy your basic taste. I've been planning this for months. By the time graduation rolled around, we had perfected the art of avoiding each other. I got a scholarship to Northwestern University, while Abigail chose to attend her father's alma mater in California. For 4 blissful years. I only saw her during holiday breaks and the occasional family gathering. Each time, she'd find subtle ways to put me down in front of the family, particularly when I shared news about academic achievements or internships. After college, I moved back to the same city as my parents, but maintained my independence in a small apartment downtown. Abigail, meanwhile, bounced between jobs and apartments, always with financial support from Richard. Despite the distance and time apart, whenever we were forced together at family events, that same tension resurfaced. She'd interrupt me, dismiss my ideas, and somehow always manage to turn the conversation toward herself. I tried to rise above it, to be the bigger person. I sent birthday cards, congratulated her on her small achievements, and never spoke ill of her to our parents. But beneath my polite exterior, I carried the weight of years of her constant undermining and our parents' failure to see it. By 26, I had built a successful career as an event planner, specializing in corporate conferences and charity galas. My eye for detail and ability to remain calm under pressure made me a favorite with high-profile clients. Meanwhile, Abigail had cycled through 3 different career paths in as many years. She tried marketing, then real estate, then interior design, never sticking with anything long enough to build expertise. Richard always cushioned her failures with financial support and connections to new opportunities. It was at a charity auction I had organized for the Children's Hospital that I met Michael. He was a pediatric surgeon being honored for his work with children who had congenital heart defects. While most guests mingled around the bar or silent auction tables, I noticed him studying the event schedule with intense concentration. "Is something wrong with the timeline?" I asked, clipboard in hand, ready to address any concerns. He looked up, slightly startled. "No, not at all. I'm just preparing myself mentally for the speech. Public speaking isn't exactly my favorite part of the job." Despite his nervousness, Michael delivered a moving speech about a 5-year-old patient who had undergone 3 heart surgeries. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Afterward, he sought me out to thank me for organizing such a successful event. "The real success is the money raised for your department," I told him. "Well, I'd like to thank you properly," he said. "Maybe over dinner." Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant where we talked until the staff began stacking chairs around us. Michael was brilliant but humble, passionate about his work but eager to hear about mine. Unlike other men I'd dated, he asked thoughtful questions and remembered the details of my answers weeks later. Over the next year, our relationship deepened. I introduced Michael to my family at Thanksgiving dinner. Mom immediately adored him, while Richard approved of his professional credentials. Abigail, however, watched our interactions with narrowed eyes. "So you cut open little kids for a living," she remarked during dinner. "That must be traumatic for them." Michael responded with grace. "Actually, I find children are incredibly resilient. They often recover faster than adults, both physically and emotionally." Later that night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "He's way too good for you," she whispered. "Just wait until he figures that out." I refused to let her taint my happiness. Michael and I continued building our life together, supporting each other's careers and dreams. On our 1-year anniversary, he took me to Lake Michigan at sunset. We walked barefoot along the shore, and when I turned around, he was on one knee, holding a ring box. "Emily, you organize everything in your life with such care and purpose," he said. "I'm hoping you'll help me organize the rest of mine. Will you marry me?" I said yes through happy tears. And we celebrated with champagne on the beach. That night, I called my mom to share the news. She squealed with delight and immediately started talking about wedding venues and guest lists. When we announced our engagement at the next family dinner, my parents were genuinely thrilled. Richard proposed a toast to our future, and Mom kept wiping away tears of joy. Abigail plastered on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Congratulations," she said, hugging me stiffly. "I always knew you'd be the first to get married. You've always been so conventional." I ignored the backhanded compliment and focused on my happiness. Michael and I set a date for the following June, giving us 18 months to plan. We found a beautiful venue with gardens overlooking the lake where he had proposed. I threw myself into planning, drawing on my professional experience to create a day that would reflect our relationship, elegant but unpretentious, meaningful but fun. For the first time in years, Mom and I bonded over wedding magazines and vendor appointments. She came to every dress fitting and tasted every cake sample. I began to hope that my wedding might heal some of the distance that had grown between us since her marriage to Richard. 3 months into our engagement, Mom called me, bubbling with excitement. "Guess what? Abigail is engaged too. Isn't that wonderful?" I nearly dropped my phone. Abigail had been dating a guy named Jason for barely 3 months. They had met at a yoga retreat, and he worked as a lifestyle coach, whatever that meant. I had only met him once, briefly, at a family dinner where he spent most of the time talking about his personal brand and the book he was planning to write. "That's surprising," I managed to say. "They haven't been together very long." "When you know," Mom replied dismissively. "Richard is over the moon. You know how he's always worried about Abigail finding her path." The next family dinner became an engagement celebration for Abigail. Richard ordered champagne and gave a tearful speech about his little girl finding happiness. Mom presented Abigail with a family heirloom necklace to wear on her wedding day. My own engagement, now 6 months old, seemed forgotten in the excitement. Jason dominated the conversation with plans for their brand-building wedding. They wanted to live-stream the ceremony, have social media influencers as guests, and secure sponsorships from luxury brands. Abigail sat beside him, nodding enthusiastically and occasionally shooting triumphant glances my way. "Have you set a date?" I asked, trying to be supportive despite my reservations. "We're figuring out the optimal timing for maximum exposure," Jason replied. "Probably next year, during peak wedding season." I nodded politely, but something in Abigail's smile made me uneasy. I pushed the feeling aside, determined not to let her engagement affect my own happiness. Over the next few months, though, I noticed concerning patterns. When I mentioned a florist I was considering, Mom would say, "Oh, Abigail is thinking of using them too." When I showed her my wedding color palette, she remarked that it was so similar to what Abigail had chosen. The photographer I had researched for months suddenly became unavailable because Abigail had booked him. Michael noticed my growing frustration. "Is everything okay with the wedding planning?" he asked one night after I spent an hour on the phone with the venue coordinator. "It's fine," I said automatically, then caught myself. We had promised honesty in our relationship. Actually, no. I can't shake the feeling that Abigail is deliberately copying my wedding plans, and my parents can't see it. He sat beside me and took my hand. "Your feelings are valid, Emily. If you're noticing a pattern, it's probably there. But remember, no matter what venue or flowers or photographer we have, at the end of the day, we'll be married. That's what matters." His perspective helped ground me, and I redoubled my focus on creating our special day rather than worrying about Abigail. Little did I know that her copycat behavior was just the beginning. 6 months of wedding planning flew by in a whirlwind of vendor meetings, budget spreadsheets, and Pinterest boards. By December, we had secured our dream venue, a historic mansion with lakeside gardens. We had chosen our wedding party, selected the menu, and finalized the guest list. Following tradition, I had found my perfect dress, a vintage-inspired gown with delicate lace detailing and a modest train. It was being kept at my parents' house since Michael and I shared an apartment, and I didn't want him to accidentally see it before the big day. In January, 8 months before our June wedding, we sent out our save-the-date cards. I had designed them myself, incorporating watercolor illustrations of the lake where Michael proposed. We received enthusiastic responses from friends and family, and everything seemed to be falling into place. 2 weeks after our save the dates went out, Mom called me, her voice unusually hesitant. "Emily, darling, I need to talk to you about something." "What's up, Mom?" "It's about Abigail's wedding date. She and Jason have finally set it, and well, it's the same day as yours." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Mom, that can't be right. We sent out save the dates weeks ago. Everyone knows we're getting married on June 18th. "I know, sweetheart. But Abigail says it's the only date that works with Jason's book launch schedule and the availability of the influencers they want at their wedding." "Mom, you can't be serious." "There are 365 days in a year. They can pick any other day." "I was hoping maybe you could consider moving your date," she suggested tentatively. "You're so good at planning, and I'm sure you could reorganize everything." I was speechless. After a moment, I managed to ask, "Have you suggested that Abigail change her date?" "Well, no. You know how set she gets on things. And Richard is so excited." That evening, I insisted on a family meeting. Michael came with me for moral support, though I asked him to let me handle the conversation. When we arrived at my parents' house, Abigail and Jason were already there, looking smug. "There must be a misunderstanding about the wedding dates," I began calmly. "Michael and I sent our save the dates weeks ago for June 18th. We've already paid non-refundable deposits to multiple vendors for that date." "June 18th is the perfect date for our brand strategy," Jason replied. "The summer solstice weekend gets great social media engagement." "But we already announced our date," I insisted. "Surely you can find another weekend that works." Abigail shrugged. "It's not always about you, Emily. This is the date that works for us. Maybe you should be more flexible." I turned to my parents, expecting them to see reason. "Mom, Richard, can you please help us resolve this? It doesn't make sense for both weddings to be on the same day. Family would have to choose which one to attend." Richard cleared his throat uncomfortably. "I think you're overreacting, Emily. Different people can attend each wedding. It's not that big of a deal." "Not a big deal." I echoed in disbelief. "You and Mom would have to choose which daughter's wedding to attend." "Well," Mom looked at Richard, then back at me. "We were thinking we could attend Abigail's ceremony and then come to your reception." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "You can't be serious. You would miss my wedding ceremony? The most important part of the day." "Don't be so dramatic," Abigail cut in. "It's just a boring ritual that takes like 20 minutes. Michael, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "With all due respect, this isn't fair to Emily. We've had our date planned for months. We've made deposits. Guests have already arranged travel. Life isn't fair," Abigail replied flippantly. "You'll learn that when you have to deal with divorced parents, right, Emily?" That low blow left me breathless. I stood up, gathering my composure. "I won't be changing my wedding date. I hope you'll reconsider yours, but if not, people will have to choose which wedding to attend. Including you, Mom, and Richard." As we left, I confronted Abigail in the hallway. "I know what you're doing," I told her quietly. "This isn't about Jason's book launch or social media engagement. This is about trying to overshadow my day, like you've tried to do with everything else in my life." She didn't even bother denying it. "Maybe I'm just tired of you always being the golden child, getting all the attention for being so perfect. Did you ever think of that? Now it's my turn." That confrontation marked a turning point. Over the next few months, the tension escalated dramatically. Abigail didn't just keep the same date, she began copying other elements of our wedding. When she learned we had chosen a string quartet for our ceremony, she booked one too. When my mom mentioned our menu selections, Abigail chose similar dishes. She even selected a wedding dress from the same designer as mine, though thankfully a different style. Michael's family was outraged on our behalf. His parents, both retired teachers with strong moral compasses, couldn't understand my parents' passivity. Michael's sister Amanda became my strongest ally, stepping in to help with wedding tasks when my own mother was too busy with Abigail's planning. "I can't believe they're letting this happen," Amanda said during a cake tasting that my mom had skipped to attend Abigail's. If my sister pulled something like this, my parents would shut it down immediately. I tried to maintain a relationship with my parents despite everything. During Sunday dinners, I would listen to them excitedly discuss Abigail's wedding plans while barely asking about mine. I watched as they helped her negotiate with vendors while telling me to handle my own arrangements. Each slight hurt, but I buried the pain and focused on creating the day Michael and I wanted. 3 months before the wedding, the pressure from my family intensified. Mom called almost daily with subtle suggestions that I change my date. "Your cousin Sophia just told me she's devastated about having to choose between the weddings," she said one afternoon. "And your grandparents are so upset about it too. They're too elderly to attend both events in one day." "I understand it's difficult," I replied, holding firm. "But we've had our date planned for over a year now. All our deposits are non-refundable. Our guests have booked flights and hotels." "Abigail is family," Mom countered. "She's your sister." "Stepsister," I corrected gently. "And she deliberately chose my wedding date knowing it would cause problems." The guilt trips continued. Richard called to tell me how stressed my mother was getting over the situation. Abigail sent passive-aggressive texts about family loyalty. Extended family members, hearing only one side of the story, began reaching out to express their disappointment in my stubbornness. Through it all, Michael remained my rock. "We are getting married on June 18th. He would remind me when I felt my resolve wavering. With or without them. I'll be there. And I'll be the happiest man on earth because I'm marrying you." His family rallied around us too. His mother called regularly to check in. His father helped us revise our budget when we had to hire additional help to replace family members who were supposed to assist. And his sister organized a beautiful bridal shower when it became clear my mother wouldn't. 1 week before the wedding, my parents asked Michael and me to come over for dinner. I hoped it might be an olive branch, a final attempt to repair the rift before our big day. Instead, they delivered their final decision. "We've thought long and hard about this," Richard began, his tone formal. "And we've decided that we'll be attending Abigail's wedding ceremony and reception." Even though I had suspected this might happen, hearing the words out loud felt like a physical blow. "You're choosing not to come to my wedding at all," I clarified, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's not about choosing," Mom insisted, tears in her eyes. "Abigail needs us more right now. You're so independent, and you have Michael's family." "I needed you too," I said simply, rising from the table. "But I understand your choice." As we drove home in silence, I finally allowed myself to cry. Michael held my hand across the console, letting me process the hurt. "We'll still have a beautiful day," he promised when we reached our apartment. "It just won't include people who couldn't put your happiness first." That night, I made peace with having a wedding without my parents. It would hurt, but as Michael said, we would still have our perfect day. Little did I know that Abigail had one final act of sabotage planned, one that would change everything. The week before my wedding became a blur of final preparations. With my parents absent from the process, Michael's family stepped up in remarkable ways. His mother Janet helped stuff welcome bags for out-of-town guests. His father George picked up relatives from the airport. His sister Amanda handled last-minute calls from vendors that I was too overwhelmed to take. My best friends from college, Rachel and Sarah, arrived 3 days early to help with anything I needed. They set up a command center in our living room, checking items off lists and solving problems before they even reached me. "We've got this," Rachel assured me. "Your only job is to relax and be beautiful." The final dress fitting was scheduled for Friday, the day before the wedding. The alterations had been completed weeks ago. But I wanted one last check to ensure everything was perfect. The dress had been stored at my parents' house in a spare bedroom closet, both to keep it away from Michael's curious eyes and because their house had more space than our apartment. That Friday morning, I drove to my parents' house, using my key to let myself in since I knew they would be busy with Abigail's rehearsal dinner preparations. The house was uncharacteristically quiet. I headed upstairs to the guest room where my dress was stored, passing Abigail's old room on the way. The door was ajar, and I glimpsed her wedding dress hanging on the closet door, shimmering ivory satin with crystal beading. When I reached the guest room and opened the closet, my dress was there in its protective garment bag, looking undisturbed. I carefully removed it from the hanger and laid it on the bed to check for any wrinkles before taking it home. As I unzipped the garment bag, a sense of anticipation filled me. Despite everything, I was still excited to wear this dress when I married Michael. The zipper came down, and I pulled back the protective covering. That's when I saw them. Small, deliberate holes scattered across the bodice and skirt of my wedding dress. Some were barely noticeable, others the size of a quarter. They weren't accidents or tears, they had clean edges, clearly made with scissors. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I just stared at the damaged dress, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Then reality crashed down around me. My wedding dress, the one I had spent months selecting and paying for with my own money, had been deliberately destroyed. With shaking hands, I inspected the damage more closely. The holes were strategically placed to be noticed only when the dress was being worn. They weren't immediately visible when the dress was hanging or folded. Someone had taken their time, planning this act of sabotage carefully. And I knew exactly who that someone was. I sank onto the edge of the bed, still holding a section of damaged lace in my trembling fingers. Hot tears spilled down my cheeks as the magnitude of the betrayal washed over me. This wasn't just about a ruined dress. It was the culmination of years of jealousy and resentment. A final strike designed to break me at my most vulnerable moment. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I heard the front door open and close. Voices drifted up the stairs. My mother's and Abigail's, discussing flower arrangements for tomorrow's ceremony. I quickly returned the dress to its garment bag, zipped it up, and took several deep breaths to compose myself. As I walked down the stairs with the garment bag over my arm, they looked up in surprise. "Emily, we didn't know you were here," Mom said, her expression shifting from shock to guilt. "I came to pick up my dress for the final fitting," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Abigail's eyes flicked to the garment bag, then back to my face. Something in her expression, a tiny smirk quickly concealed, confirmed my suspicions beyond any doubt. "Well, I hope everything is perfect for tomorrow," she said with false sweetness. "I'm sure it will be," I replied, meeting her gaze directly. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how deeply she had hurt me. Not yet. In the car, I called Michael, my voice finally breaking as I explained what had happened. His initial response was pure rage. "I'm calling the whole thing off," he declared. "I won't put you through a wedding after what she's done." "No," I said firmly, surprising myself with my resolve. "That's exactly what she wants. To ruin our day completely. We're getting married tomorrow, Michael. With or without a perfect dress." Back at our apartment, I laid the damaged dress on our dining table. Rachel and Sarah gasped when they saw the holes. "That evil witch," Sarah whispered, inspecting the deliberate cuts. "Do you have proof it was her?" Rachel asked pragmatically. I shook my head. "Nothing concrete. But who else would do this?" Sarah pulled out her phone. "We need to document this." "Then we're calling the police." "No police," I decided. "Not yet. First, I need to call my parents." The conversation with my mother was brief and painful. I explained what I had found and my certainty about who was responsible. Her immediate defense of Abigail was as expected as it was heartbreaking. "Emily, you can't possibly think Abigail would do something like this," Mom protested. "Why would she? She has her own wedding to worry about." "Because she's always been jealous of me, Mom. You know that." "That's ridiculous. You've always been the successful one. The one with the stable career and relationship. Abigail has struggled for years. If anyone should be jealous, it's you of her." The conversation ended with my mother promising to look into it, but her dismissive tone told me she had already made up her mind. Richard's call 10 minutes later confirmed it. "Your mother is very upset," he began without preamble. "Accusing Abigail of such a malicious act is beyond the pale, Emily. I thought you were more mature than this." "Richard, my dress has holes cut into it. Someone deliberately damaged it. Perhaps it was damaged during alterations, or maybe moths got to it. But throwing around accusations isn't helping anyone." I ended the call feeling defeated. My own parents couldn't, or wouldn't, see the truth that was right in front of them. The pattern of my entire relationship with Abigail repeated one final time. Michael came home to find me, Rachel, and Sarah sitting around the damaged dress in silence. He knelt beside me and took my hands in his. "We have two options," he said gently. "We can postpone the wedding until we find a new dress. Or we can get married tomorrow in whatever you feel beautiful in. I'll support either choice." I looked into his eyes, so full of love and concern, and felt a clarity I hadn't expected. "Neither," I said. "I have a third option." I picked up my phone and called my friend Jessica, a talented designer who had just started her own fashion line. I explained the situation and asked if she could come over immediately. An hour later, she arrived with her sewing kit, fabric samples, and a determined expression. "Let me see what we're working with," she said, examining the dress carefully. After several minutes, she looked up with a gleam in her eye. "I can fix this. Better than fix it. I can transform it. But it'll take all night." "We'll help," Rachel volunteered immediately. "And I'll keep everyone fed and caffeinated," Sarah added. What followed was a night I'll never forget. Jessica worked magic with needle and thread, incorporating new lace panels to cover the damaged sections. She added delicate beading to distract from areas that couldn't be completely repaired. Rachel and Sarah assisted, handing her tools, holding fabric in place, offering encouragement when frustration mounted. Michael was banished to his best man's house for the night, both to maintain the tradition of not seeing the bride before the wedding and to give us space to work. He sent regular text messages of support and arranged for a steady stream of food deliveries to fuel our efforts. As dawn broke on my wedding day, Jessica made the final stitch and stepped back to admire her work. The dress had been transformed. What had once been a traditional lace gown was now an artistic masterpiece, with intricate paneling and beadwork that made it entirely unique. The strategic placement of new elements completely concealed the damage while elevating the entire design. "It's even more beautiful than before," I whispered, running my hand over the delicate details. Jessica smiled tiredly. "Sometimes the most beautiful things come from having to fix what's broken." Looking at my wedding dress, reimagined and more stunning than I could have imagined, I felt a strange sense of gratitude. Abigail's act of malice had led to something unexpectedly wonderful. As I hugged Jessica, Rachel, and Sarah, I realized I had everything I needed for my wedding day: a gorgeous dress, a loving fiancé, and friends who would stay up all night to make sure I felt beautiful. For the first time since discovering the damaged dress, I smiled genuinely. Abigail had tried to break me, but instead, she had inadvertently given me a gift. The realization that I was stronger than I knew and more loved than I had ever understood. I woke on my wedding day in the hotel suite we had booked for getting ready, surrounded by my bridesmaids. Despite having barely slept, I felt surprisingly calm and clear-headed. The transformed dress hung by the window, catching the morning light in its intricate beadwork. "How are you feeling?" Rachel asked, handing me a cup of coffee. "Ready," I replied with a certainty that surprised even me. More ready than I've ever been for anything. While the absence of my parents created a hollow space in my heart, I refused to let it overshadow the day. My bridesmaids, a mix of college friends and coworkers who had become like family, filled the suite with laughter and excitement. Amanda, Michael's sister, arrived with breakfast pastries and immediately took charge of the schedule, her organizational skills rivaling my own. "Hair and makeup team will be here in 30 minutes, she announced. "Photographer at 10. We're right on track." As the morning progressed, I found myself enjoying every moment of the preparations. The hairstylist created a soft, romantic updo, weaving tiny flowers through my brown hair. The makeup artist gave me a natural glow that made my eyes shine. When I finally stepped into my reimagined dress, with Jessica making last-minute adjustments, the room fell silent. "Emily," Sarah whispered, "you look absolutely breathtaking." I turned to face the full-length mirror and barely recognized myself. The dress, with its clever redesign, fit perfectly and moved like water when I walked. The delicate beadwork caught the light with every breath I took. In that moment, I realized that this was exactly how I was meant to look on my wedding day, not in the original dress, but in this unique creation born from adversity. As I was admiring the transformation, there was a knock at the suite door. Amanda opened it to reveal a woman with a clipboard and a man with a camera. "Hi, I'm Danielle from Wedding Day Miracles," the woman said. "Is this the Bennett wedding?" Confused, I stepped forward. "Yes, I'm Emily Bennett. What's this about?" Danielle smiled warmly. "Your friend Jessica contacted our show last night. We showcase wedding day transformations and acts of kindness. She told us about your dress emergency and the overnight redesign. We'd love to feature your story on our program, if you're comfortable with it." I blinked in surprise, looking to Jessica, who gave me a sheepish smile. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "What we did last night was pretty amazing, and I thought sharing it might inspire other brides facing disasters." The idea of having cameras document what was already an emotional day gave me pause, but something about it felt right. Perhaps it was the opportunity to show that beauty could rise from betrayal, or maybe it was the small, petty part of me that loved the idea of Abigail seeing our wedding on television. "Okay," I agreed. "But they can't interfere with the ceremony or important moments." "Absolutely," Danielle assured me. "We'll be like flies on the wall during the critical parts. We mainly want to capture the story of the dress transformation and your reaction to walking down the aisle in it." With that settled, the final preparations continued with the addition of a small camera crew documenting Jessica explaining the redesign process and my bridesmaids sharing their perspectives on the overnight miracle. When it was time to leave for the venue, I took one final look around the hotel suite, now strewn with makeup brushes, hairpins, and empty champagne glasses. This wasn't how I had imagined my wedding morning, without my mother helping me into my dress, or my father waiting to escort me down the aisle. But it was perfect in its own way, filled with genuine love and support from people who had proven their loyalty. The lakeside garden where our ceremony would take place looked like something from a fairy tale. White chairs lined a petal-strewn aisle, leading to an arch entwined with wildflowers and greenery. Guests were already being seated, their expressions warm and excited as they chatted among themselves. From the bridal waiting area, I could see Michael's parents greeting guests with the warmth they would have shown if they were my own flesh and blood. His father, George, looked distinguished in his tuxedo, while his mother, Janet, wore a beautiful blue dress that complemented her silver hair. Amanda peeked out the window and squeezed my hand. "Michael looks so handsome," she reported. "And so nervous. He keeps adjusting his tie." The thought of Michael waiting for me, probably reviewing his vows in his head for the 100th time, filled me with a surge of love so powerful it almost took my breath away. In just a few minutes, we would begin our life together, surrounded by people who genuinely wished us well. The ceremony music began, a string quartet playing the pieces we had selected together months ago. My bridesmaids lined up in their sage green dresses, each hugging me before walking down the aisle. With no father to escort me, I had asked George, Michael's father, if he would do me the honor. He had accepted with tears in his eyes, saying he would be proud to. Now he appeared at the doorway, looking emotional but composed. "You look beautiful, Emily," he said, offering his arm. "My son is the luckiest man alive." The camera crew positioned themselves discreetly as the wedding coordinator gave us our cue. The music changed to the bridal processional, and all the guests rose to their feet, turning to watch as I began my walk toward Michael. The moment our eyes met across the garden, everything else faded away. The absent parents, the damaged dress, the betrayal all disappeared, leaving only this perfect moment of connection. Michael's eyes widened as he took in my appearance, and I could see him mouth, "Wow," as I approached. George placed my hand in Michael's, patting our joined hands before taking his seat. Michael leaned in close. "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he whispered. The ceremony was everything I had hoped for. Our vows, which we had written ourselves, spoke of resilience and growth, of building a future based on trust and mutual support. When Michael referred to weathering storms together and emerging stronger, I knew he was acknowledging what we had already overcome, and I squeezed his hands in silent understanding. By the power vested in me, the officiant concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." As Michael's lips met mine, sealing our commitment, the guests erupted in applause. We turned to face them as a married couple, and I felt a surge of joy so pure it washed away any lingering sadness about who wasn't there. The reception was held in the mansion's grand ballroom, where crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables decorated with wildflowers and candles. Michael and I entered to cheers and music, taking our first dance to the song that had been playing when he proposed. Throughout the evening, the wedding day miracles crew captured key moments, interviewing guests about the dress transformation and our love story. Danielle, the producer, approached me during a quiet moment. "Your story is remarkable, Emily," she said. "The way you turned such a heartbreaking situation into something beautiful. Would you be willing to do a short interview about it?" We usually air these segments live during our Sunday evening broadcast. I hesitated only briefly before agreeing. Part of healing, I realized, was sharing your story, allowing others to learn from both your pain and your triumph. During the interview, I spoke honestly about the dress sabotage, careful not to name Abigail directly, but making the circumstances clear. I focused instead on Jessica's incredible talent and the support of my friends who had turned a potential disaster into a blessing in disguise. "Sometimes the universe has a way of turning malice into magic," I told the camera. "My dress is now one of a kind, and I feel more beautiful in it than I ever would have in the original." When Danielle asked about my absent family, I took a deep breath and answered with dignity. "Today I'm surrounded by people who have chosen to be here, who have shown their love through actions rather than obligations. That feels more like family than anything defined by blood or legal ties." The interview concluded just as the band announced it was time to cut the cake. Michael joined me, and together we performed the traditional cake cutting, feeding each other small bites amid laughter and camera flashes. Later, as we mingled with our guests, Janet pulled me aside, her expression concerned. "Emily, dear, I just received a strange text from your mother. She asked if the wedding was being filmed for television. Do you know anything about that?" I explained about the Wedding Day Miracles crew. Realization dawning. The show airs live segments during their Sunday broadcast, which would be right now. Janet's eyes widened. "Your parents must have seen it." The thought of my parents and Abigail watching our wedding on television, seeing the beautiful dress that had risen from destruction, hearing my gracious but honest interview, gave me a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also sadness that it had come to this. I pushed those thoughts aside, determined to remain present in my perfect day. "Whatever they saw or didn't see doesn't matter right now," I told Janet. "Today is about Michael and me, and the life we're building together." She hugged me tightly. "You're already part of our family, Emily. You have been from the moment Michael brought you home." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing, toasts, and laughter. When Michael and I finally departed amid a shower of flower petals, climbing into the vintage car that would take us to our hotel, I felt nothing but gratitude. "Mrs. Campbell," Michael said, kissing my hand once we were settled in the back seat. "How does it feel?" "Perfect," I replied honestly. Despite everything, or maybe because of everything, absolutely perfect. Little did I know that across town, my unexpected television appearance had set in motion events that would bring a final reckoning with my family sooner than I anticipated. Michael and I departed for our honeymoon the day after the wedding, spending 2 blissful weeks in Bali. The pristine beaches, lush landscapes, and serene temples provided the perfect backdrop for beginning our married life. Far from family drama and wedding stress, we reconnected with each other and the reasons we had fallen in love in the first place. I had deliberately left my phone behind, wanting to be fully present in these precious first days of marriage. Michael kept his for emergencies, but promised not to check messages or social media. We existed in our own little bubble, swimming in crystal clear waters, sampling exotic foods, and falling asleep to the sound of distant waves. The return to reality was jarring. As our plane touched down at home, Michael turned on his phone to a barrage of notifications. His expression grew increasingly troubled as he scrolled through them. "What is it?" I asked, concern building. "It's your parents," he said, showing me his screen. "They've been trying to reach us. Apparently, they saw the wedding on TV." I took a deep breath, having almost forgotten about the Wedding Day Miracles segment. "What did they say?" "Just that they need to talk to you urgently. They've called, texted, and even reached out to Amanda." I nodded, surprisingly calm. "I'll deal with it tomorrow." "Tonight?" "We're still on honeymoon time." When we arrived home, our apartment was filled with wedding gifts waiting to be opened and thank you cards waiting to be written. Life was calling us back. But I was determined to maintain the peace I had found in Bali for at least one more night. The next morning, over coffee, I finally turned on my phone. It immediately began buzzing with weeks of accumulated notifications. There were 27 missed calls from my mother, 15 from Richard, and even 3 from Abigail. The voicemails ranged from demanding to pleading. "Emily, call us immediately. There's been a misunderstanding. Please come over so we can talk. This has gone far enough. Answer your phone." Among the family messages were dozens of others: congratulations from wedding guests, well wishes from colleagues, and, surprisingly, several messages from Jessica's fashion industry contacts who had seen the Wedding Day Miracles segment and wanted to discuss potential collaborations. "Your dress redesign went viral," Michael remarked, reading over my shoulder. "Jessica's been trying to reach you too." I opened her message to find exciting news. After the broadcast, she had received multiple inquiries about her work, including an offer from a bridal magazine to feature the dress transformation story. "This could be huge for her career," I said, genuinely happy for my friend. "And what about your parents?" Michael asked gently. "Are you going to call them back?" I considered the question carefully. "No. If they want to talk, they can come here. I'm done accommodating their convenience." Michael squeezed my hand supportively. "I'm with you, whatever you decide." Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see my parents standing in the hallway, looking anxious. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and opened the door. "Emily," Mom began, moving to embrace me. But I stepped back, maintaining distance. "Come in," I said coolly, leading them to the living room where Michael waited. Neither of us offered refreshments or engaged in small talk. The time for pleasantries had passed. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us until Richard finally spoke. "We saw your wedding on television." "Yes." "It was featured on Wedding Day Miracles," I confirmed. "They were interested in how we transformed a deliberately damaged wedding dress into something beautiful." Mom flinched at the word deliberately, but pressed on. "The dress looked stunning, darling. And you were a beautiful bride." "Thank you," I replied simply, offering nothing more. Richard cleared his throat. "We had no idea about the dress, Emily. You have to believe that." "Do I?" I asked, my voice steady. "Because I told you exactly what happened. And you dismissed it completely. You accused me of being immature and making false accusations." "We didn't know," Mom insisted. "How could we have known Abigail would do something like that?" "Because I told you," I said, finally allowing some emotion into my voice. "I've been telling you for years about the things she's done, and you've never believed me. Not once." The silence that followed was heavy with years of unacknowledged hurts. Michael placed his hand on my back, a silent reminder of his support. "Where is Abigail now?" I asked. "Enjoying her honeymoon after her perfect wedding." My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's partly why we're here," Richard admitted. "The wedding didn't happen." This caught me by surprise. "What do you mean, it didn't happen?" Mom looked down at her clasped hands. "Jason left her at the altar. He said he couldn't go through with it after what he learned about her." "What did he learn?" I asked, though I had a strong suspicion. "He saw your interview on the show," Richard explained. When they returned to the dressing room, he confronted Abigail about the dress. "She didn't deny it, Emily. She actually seemed proud of what she'd done. He called off the wedding right there." Mom continued. "Said he couldn't marry someone capable of such cruelty to their own sister." The guests were already seated. It was humiliating. I absorbed this information, feeling a complex mix of vindication and pity. And now you believe me, I stated rather than asked. We should have believed you long ago, Mom admitted, tears filling her eyes. After Jason left, Abigail had a meltdown. She started saying terrible things, about all the ways she'd tried to sabotage you over the years. Things we never knew about. I tried to tell you, I said quietly. We know that now, Richard acknowledged. We failed you, Emily. There's no excuse for it. I studied their faces, seeing genuine remorse for perhaps the first time. Where is Abigail now? She's staying with a friend, Mom replied. We suggested she seek therapy. This pattern of behavior isn't healthy. No, it's not, I agreed. And enabling it wasn't healthy either. They nodded, accepting the criticism without defense. A silence fell over the room. Not quite comfortable, but no longer charged with tension. We watched the entire broadcast, Mom finally said. Your ceremony was beautiful. Your vows made me cry. The dress was remarkable, Richard added. Even better than the original, if I may say so. It was, I agreed. Jessica is incredibly talented. Another pause, then Mom asked hesitantly, is there any chance? Could you ever forgive us, Emily? I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't something I can just give you today. It's going to take time. And it's going to require changes in how we relate to each other. We understand, Richard said. We're willing to do whatever it takes. That includes setting proper boundaries with Abigail, I added firmly. I can't have a relationship with her, at least not for the foreseeable future. And I need you to respect that. They nodded in agreement. We respect your decision, Mom assured me. We've already told Abigail she needs to take responsibility for her actions before any healing can begin. As the conversation continued, we began to outline what a new relationship might look like. Small steps at first. Dinners together without Abigail present. Open communication about feelings and boundaries, acknowledgement of past patterns and commitment to changing them. When they finally rose to leave, Mom paused at the door. Your father would have been so proud of you, she said quietly, referring to my biological father who had largely faded from my life after the divorce. The way you handled everything with such grace. The mention of my father caught me off guard, a tender spot I hadn't expected to be touched. I simply nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After they left, Michael wrapped his arms around me. How are you feeling? Tired, I admitted. But also lighter somehow. You stood your ground beautifully, he said. I'm so proud of you. That evening, as we unpacked wedding gifts and settled back into our life together, I reflected on the day's revelations. Abigail's comeuppance had come not from any action I had taken, but from her own inability to contain her malice. In trying to destroy my happiness, she had ultimately sabotaged her own. There was no joy in that knowledge, only a somber recognition that some people create their own punishments. I hoped, for her sake, that this would be a turning point toward healing rather than further bitterness. As for my parents, only time would tell if their remorse would translate into lasting change. I was willing to give them the opportunity to prove themselves, but with the clear understanding that my trust would need to be rebuilt slowly, brick by brick. What I knew with certainty was that I had Michael, whose love had never wavered, and a circle of friends who had shown their loyalty when it mattered most. Whatever happened with my family of origin, I had already begun building my chosen family, founded on mutual respect and genuine care. That night, as Michael and I fell asleep in each other's arms, I felt a profound sense of peace. The road ahead might not be smooth, but we would travel it together, stronger for having weathered our first major storm. 1 year passed since our wedding day, bringing with it the traditional paper anniversary and a time for reflection. Michael and I celebrated quietly, with a picnic by the lake where he had proposed. As we toasted with champagne, I marveled at how much had changed in 12 months. To us, Michael said, clinking his glass against mine. And to your incredible strength. To us, I echoed. And to unexpected blessings in disguise. The transformation of my wedding dress had indeed become a blessing beyond anything I could have imagined. The Wedding Day Miracles segment featuring our story had resonated with viewers nationwide, leading to opportunities one never anticipated. Jessica's career had skyrocketed after the broadcast. Her phone rang constantly with brides seeking custom designs, and she had recently opened her own boutique downtown. She insisted that I served as her muse and brand ambassador, a role I embraced with enthusiasm during evenings and weekends. My own career had evolved as well. While I still planned corporate events, I had developed a niche specialty in what I called healing celebrations. These were weddings, renewal ceremonies, and milestone parties for people who, like me, had complicated family dynamics. My clients appreciated my first-hand understanding of their challenges and my ability to create meaningful events that honored their journeys. Remember that bride last month? I asked Michael as we spread our picnic blanket. The one whose mother refused to attend unless her estranged father was uninvited. Michael nodded, unpacking containers of food. The one where you created separate but connected celebration spaces. Yes. She called yesterday to thank me again. Apparently. Her parents actually spoke civilly for the first time in 15 years during the reception. You have a gift for healing wounds through celebration, Michael said. It's beautiful to watch. My relationship with my own parents had undergone careful reconstruction over the past year. The process began with weekly dinners, just the four of us, where we practiced honest communication. There were difficult conversations, tears shed on all sides, and painful reckonings with past patterns. Richard, to his credit, had taken responsibility for his role in enabling Abigail's behavior. I wanted so badly to believe I had the perfect daughter that I refused to see the truth, he admitted during one particularly emotional dinner. I failed both of you by not setting proper boundaries. My mother had struggled more with acknowledging her part. Her instinct to defend Abigail remained strong. But she was learning to balance it with respect for my feelings and experiences. Our relationship had improved significantly once she stopped trying to broker peace between Abigail and me before either of us was ready. As for Abigail herself, our paths had diverged completely for several months after the wedding. According to my parents, she had eventually entered therapy, confronting the jealousy and insecurity that had driven her destructive behavior. 6 months after the wedding disaster, she had sent me a handwritten letter, her first attempt at genuine apology. The letter acknowledged specific incidents over the years, from high school sabotage to the wedding date conflict, culminating in the dress destruction. She made no excuses, simply stating her actions and taking full responsibility for the pain she had caused. The letter ended not with a request for forgiveness or reconciliation, but with a promise to continue her therapeutic work and respect whatever boundaries I needed to maintain. I had appreciated the letter's sincerity but wasn't ready for direct contact. Instead, I sent a brief note through my parents, acknowledging her apology and wishing her well in her healing journey. It was a small step, but an important one. Now, a year later, we had progressed to occasional text messages, mostly holiday greetings and family updates. Last month, we had finally seen each other at a neutral location, meeting for coffee with the support of our respective therapists. The conversation had been awkward but civil, focusing on our individual growth rather than reopening old wounds. Do you think you and Abigail will ever be close? Michael asked, pouring more champagne. I considered the question carefully. I don't think we'll ever have the sister relationship my parents wanted for us. Too much has happened. But I can see us developing a respectful acquaintanceship. Maybe eventually a cautious friendship. Time will tell. Michael nodded, understanding as always. His own family had become my rock, welcoming me fully into their fold. His parents treated me like the daughter they never had, including me in family traditions and supporting my professional endeavors. Amanda had become the sister I had always wanted. A relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than obligation. As the sun began to set over the lake, casting golden light across the water, I reflected on the lessons of the past year. The wedding dress disaster, intended to break me, had instead revealed my resilience and unleashed creativity I hadn't known I possessed. The absence of my parents at my wedding, though painful, had clarified who truly constituted my support system and freed me from seeking validation from those unwilling to give it. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked, noting my contemplative expression. "How sometimes the worst moments can lead to the greatest growth," I replied. If Abigail hadn't damaged my dress, Jessica might never have had her breakthrough moment. If my parents hadn't chosen to attend her wedding instead of ours, we might still be trapped in the same dysfunctional patterns. "You've always been good at finding the silver lining," he observed. "Not always," I admitted. "It's a skill I've developed." Pain can either embitter you or enhance your capacity for empathy. I choose empathy. This philosophy had become central to both my personal and professional life. When working with clients navigating difficult family situations, I shared my story selectively, offering hope that painful experiences could be transformed into sources of strength. Even my relationship with Michael had deepened through adversity. Weathering the wedding crisis together had shown us the truth of our vows before we'd even spoken them. We had faced external pressure as a united front, setting the tone for our marriage as a partnership of equals who protected each other. As we packed up our picnic and walked hand in hand along the shoreline, I thought about the journey ahead. We had begun discussing starting a family, a prospect that both excited and slightly terrified me given my complicated family history. "What kind of parents do you think we'll be?" I asked Michael as we walked. "The kind who listen," he replied without hesitation. "The kind who believe our children when they tell us something is wrong. The kind who protect them fiercely but also teach them to stand up for themselves." His answer warmed my heart, confirming what I already knew. The legacy of dismissal and enablement would end with us. Our children, whenever they came, would grow up knowing they were heard, believed, and valued. The sun had nearly disappeared below the horizon now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. We paused to watch nature's daily masterpiece, a reminder that beauty often emerges during transitions. "Happy anniversary, Emily," Michael said softly, wrapping his arm around my waist. "Thank you for marrying me, damaged dress and all." "Thank you for standing by me through everything," I replied, leaning into his embrace. I wouldn't change a single moment of our journey, not even the difficult parts. And I meant it. The wedding dress sabotage, intended as an act of malice, had ultimately been a gift. It had stripped away pretense, forced honest reckonings, and revealed who would stand with me when it mattered most. From its tattered remains had emerged not just a more beautiful gown, but a more authentic life. As we turned toward home in the gathering twilight, I carried with me the most valuable lesson of all. True family is defined not by blood or legal ties, but by consistent acts of love, respect, and support. I had lost the family I thought I needed, only to gain the family I truly deserved. And in that knowledge lay a peace more profound than I had ever known. What about you? Have you ever experienced betrayal that ultimately led to unexpected growth or positive change? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences. And don't forget to share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes our deepest wounds can become our greatest strengths. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the family you create is often more powerful than the one you're born into.